Earth Defense Force 2017 is the first EDF game to release in North America. Shit, only 2 sentences in and I've already been caught lying. Just ignore Earth Defense Force on the SNES, that doesn't have anything to do with the series I'm talking about. Even though Europe and Japan got to experience the likes of Monster Attack and Global Defense Force for the PS2, North America wasn't so lucky. The third entry in the franchise, Earth Defense Force 2017, came out on the Xbox 360 in 2006 for Japan, and thankfully got a Western release the following year. In fact, if it weren't for the Xbox 360 exclusivity, we may have never gotten this series in the US at all, as Sony was apparently unwilling to bring bargain bin games over to the States. PlayStation seems to have a history of gatekeeping releases from the West for some reason. Thankfully, at the time, Microsoft was adamant about getting a foothold in Japan, so they hired a few Japanese developers to make exclusive games for the 360, Earth Defense Force being one of them. Even though I managed to play the game that same year it released, the series didn't really sink its hooks into me until a decade later. Up until 2018, I just viewed it as cheesy, stupid fun, a surface-level, so bad it's good kind of enjoyment. I didn't really give the games much thought, as I didn't think they were anything to be taken seriously. In that same vein, when I saw Earth Defense Force 4.1 at a used game shop for $15, I thought, fuck it, my friend and I need something to do this weekend, it'll be a good laugh, and that'll be that. Maybe I'll even trade it in afterwards, since obviously this is just a gimmick purchase. Well, it turns out 4.1 is really good, and oh shit, Earth Defense Force 5 is really, really good, and oh fuck, I guess I non-ironically love these games now. While it would be very easy and tempting to skip ahead and discuss the likes of EDF 4.1 and 5, 2017 definitely deserves its own video. Back in 2007, there just weren't that many titles that offered what Earth Defense Force did. Not only did you get to shoot ginormous bugs and robots in a ridiculously over-the-top campy adventure, you got to do the whole thing with a friend in split-screen co-op. To this day, the EDF series is easily one of the best co-op experiences out there, and even more, I'd argue they're some of the best console shooters of all time. I'll of course elaborate on that a little later though. For now, I think it's finally time to start the review. The game's aesthetic feels like a strangely perfect love child of Neon Genesis Evangelion and Starship Troopers. It's quite ironic then that even though I had played this game in 2007, I hadn't watched either of the two until just last year. I think experiencing the properties in reverse order almost made me appreciate the games even more, since EVA is one of the best anime of all time, and Starship Troopers is a pretty great movie. The story is what loosely ties the missions together, however, it's really not that important. In 2013, radio waves from space were detected which proved the existence of alien life, supposedly. 2 years later, a multinational military organization was created, the Earth Defense Force, in case any future alien visits didn't go smoothly. The idea that almost every country on Earth could band together is an incredibly wholesome thought, however, considering they're essentially putting a ton of money into a new military force based solely on the existence of some radio waves, I just hope this version of Earth has already taken care of the many other societal problems first. Naturally, the guys who voted to increase the world's defense budget were proven correct. The aliens make contact and immediately begin an all-out assault. They throw down a ton of giant bugs and robots, and even have the bugs burrow underground to allow their queens to lay eggs so they could multiply. What's so interesting about all of this is we frankly don't know who the aliens are. All we ever get to see are massive motherships, mechs, aircraft, robots, spiders, ants, and of course, kaiju monsters. At face value, obviously none of this makes any sense, and it's not really supposed to, and that's fine. It's all campy and ridiculous. I mean, you heard the clip I played in the beginning, right? Mashing big robots together with picnic ants the size of a single-family home evokes a childlike wonder that's hard to turn down. Of course there would be Godzilla monsters as well, right? It's all so nonsensically goofy in all the right ways. That being said, it is fun to speculate on what all of this means if we took it more seriously. Because I've played a few of the games in the series beyond 2017, I may be biased towards certain theories, but I'm of the opinion that we never actually get to see the true alien species. I don't think they're the bugs, of course, and I don't think any of them are flying around in the tinier ships, or even piloting the mechs or mothership. It would be very interesting if it turned out to be the kaiju monsters, but something about them just gives the impression they aren't the astro-engineer type. I don't think this initial confrontation that took place in 2017 was even a full-scale invasion. I think they just threw over the equivalent of a scout rush in Age of Empires. Enough to fuck us up if we aren't paying attention, or still in the Dark Ages, but not enough to really make a serious push. It could also be some kind of experiment with them. I mean, do you think they have ants on their planet as well, or did they train one of Earth's insect species to fight against us? In terms of the visuals, it's basically in the eye of the beholder. I don't really have a problem with how the game looks, and in fact, I quite like how stilted and flat the environments and enemies are. If anything, it makes the effects stand out even more, like the spray of bug juice after a kill, their stiff as a board corpse flying through the air, the constant property damage and flattening of the entire city just so you can get that last bug, and the many enormous explosions that occur, covering the screen with enough fire to seriously drop this game's frame rate to lower than PowerPoint levels. Since frame rate is tied to how a person interprets how smoothly the game can look, I'm counting it for the visuals discussion. The frame rate is just ass, straight up. However, that's not always a bad thing. There is a sense of satisfaction that can be gained when you're the one that caused the chaos. It's almost like an old shoot 'em up, where slowing the game down is simply part of the action. It never really becomes beneficial for gameplay purposes, however, so it's not a perfect comparison, but I do think some of this might have been intentional. That could easily be wishful thinking on my part, however, as the game can get pretty sweaty on its own. I've noticed it a lot when turning the camera horizontally, and most notably when zooming in on the guns that allow it. I don't understand why specifically, but zooming in really seems to stress this game out, slowing things down considerably even when small explosions take place. The icons for the pickups being a 2D sprite is a bit out of place, but I will admit that my nostalgia is kind of taking over for me here. I don't really have a problem with it, and it kind of makes the whole experience a little more charming. They also seem to interact with the green spray of bug juices in an interesting way. With a clear screen, the items can be hard to see through all the clutter, but once your vision is nothing but Tajiri's green mist, the items go on the foreground and essentially become highlighted. The guns that use bullets have more attention put into them than I originally thought, as you can see the shell casings drop onto the ground after you shoot, and they even make a jingly noise as it happens. The audio for the many guns and explosions is pretty fantastic. The amount of weapons in total is something I'll get to later, but it is a lot, like a lot. That being the case, the fact that so many of them can sound distinct, or otherwise just pack a powerful sound, is great. The music that plays in the background of the levels and the menu is something I don't quite know how to pin down. It simultaneously gives me the impression of it not taking itself seriously, but also sounding bombastic enough to inspire this ragtag group of EDF soldiers. The dying cries from the enemy bugs are definitely memorable, and the noise a swarm of ants can make when they all begin moving as one is very ominous. The best audio in the game, hands down, belongs to the NPCs, both the soldiers fighting alongside you and the people who dominate the intercom walkie-talkie. If giant ants and spiders flying across the screen didn't do the job of selling the campy tone of Earth Defense Force, the voice lines will definitely seal the deal.
It's those bugs again! I think they're attacking civilians! I'm going in! Let's go! Move! Yeah! You're shaking. Are you scared? No.
This is something I'll likely show off again once we get to 4.1 and 5, but the radio people are truly something else. Most people watching have likely used a walkie-talkie or some other kind of intercom, I would imagine. You all know that it's push to talk, as in you need to press a button and hold it for your audio to go through, right? That being the case, why on earth do they press it just so we can hear their dying screams? Incredible, truly. The soldiers always seem to have a designated captain and will follow them wherever they go, but once that captain dies, that squad is helpless and in need of a leader. If you walk by them when they have that yellow arrow over their head, you can recruit them to follow you. It's pretty great, but coupled with the fact that you can kill them without any comeuppance or care from the others who witnessed it, it can lead to hilarious moments like this.
Captain! Captain! Hang in! From now on,
We're with you
I'll
on this
stay
one.
with you in Storm 1.
Lastly, the EDF soldiers all seem to join in on some cool chants and rallies, like when they chant EDF over and over. How cool would it be if you as a player could join in and chant with them? Man, what a dream that would be. The environments you get to blast bugs in are pretty impressive, if only for the fact that everything is destructible. Being able to blow up literally every single structure that exists was mind-blowing back in the day. Well, there aren't many games where this is possible even today, so it still retains its charm. Unbelievably, at least so I thought when first discovering it, the stairs on the sides of the buildings aren't just for show. You can go in there and use them. It would have been so easy to just create a flat rectangle hitbox and make these inaccessible, so the extra effort is definitely appreciated. They do still blow up from one hit though, so shooting while on top of a structure with a rocket or a homing missile launcher can be very nerve-wracking. I think it's nice that for players who may not have figured this out on their own, there's a mission which places them on top of a tall building at the start. A good level to have a sniper rifle with you. Just like the destructible buildings, almost everything has a hitbox, except the civilian NPCs. This wouldn't be worth mentioning if it weren't for the green fences. They have a habit of getting in your way, completely stopping you in your tracks. Rolling can't knock them down, meaning you'll need to consciously watch out for them, awkwardly jump over, or even shoot them down to clear your way. It can lead to a lot of deaths, even if you are careful. The main gameplay loop of Earth Defense Force consists of shooting bugs and/or robots, then rolling around the map to collect items. Veterans of the series will understand that this is simply part of the ride, but for everyone else, well, this is what the game looks like sometimes. Outside of certain vehicles, rolling is the fastest mode of transportation. It's basically necessary if you want to collect all the items, since unless you've played the game already, you can never be sure when a mission will end. This is important, as any remaining items are gone forever once the level is completed. This means you might find yourself in the very common scenario where you'll leave one enemy alive while you clean the map up. The NPC soldiers can get in the way of this tactic, as they will likely kill the last one remaining, so it may be in your benefit to slaughter all your friends. It is kind of unfortunate that this is something the game almost encourages a player to do, however, I don't think you necessarily need to be doing this every mission. If you start the game on normal, you'll likely have just enough firepower and max health to get through the game, and if not, you'll be awfully close. Every individual armor sprite adds 1.2 hit points to your total health pool, and it's pretty fun to see that number slowly rise over the course of your play sessions, knowing it's only because of your efforts to collect them that you can sustain more damage. Weapon drops have a chance to provide something new, but oftentimes it will be things you already have. The difficulty level plays a big role here, as many weapons are locked behind playing on hard, hardest, or, for some, even inferno. The specific mission you play impacts this as well, and a few great walkthroughs of the past have exact numbers. All of this becomes important when advancing to higher difficulties, however, it is possible to hit a brick wall even if you don't plan on playing it more than once. On my most recent playthrough, the final mission of the game felt impassable without a friend, so I went back to earlier levels to grind on hard difficulty. Mission 40 is one of the community's favorites when it comes to farming new weapons, and the results speak for themselves. This level also demonstrates the unfortunate situation where items land on hard-to-reach terrain. All you can do in this game is jump and roll, so if those can't reach, then there goes that potentially great weapon. This unattainable item problem happens if you kill enemies that are above or in certain water sources as well. You can swim, for some reason, but since the items sink and don't wash up on shore, they're gone forever. Another slightly grating issue is how the minimap displays information. Weapons, armor, and health are all green dots. Considering they aren't the primary goal when you're in the rolling phase at the end of a mission, it would be nice if health was a different color so you know where you don't need to go. It would also be beneficial when you're in desperate need of health while you keep fucking finding weapons and armor. Like, seriously? The last thing I'll mention about the drops relates to when you fail a level. You don't get to keep any of the goodies you collected if you die. This is especially unfortunate when you don't know how a mission plays out, so you may think you're keeping the final enemy alive while you spend 5 or so minutes to collect items, only to get completely bodied when you realize your loadout wasn't suited for the level after all. The game not explicitly laying out if certain missions will have dropships or not is just a problem that shouldn't exist. You can only carry 2 weapons into a mission, and given the insane quantity available, you might find yourself itching to try out some of the newer ones you haven't spent much time with. Unless you're underground, there's always a possibility that you'll encounter dropship spawners, and the missions that have them won't end until you destroy them. Shooting at the center when it opens is the only way to take them out, and only a handful of weapons have the range to hit the dang things. It feels awful to spend a hefty amount of time collecting items and doing everything right, only to face a challenge you literally can't complete because your shotgun can't fire far enough, and your turrets won't aim at it. Perhaps the vehicles could have been that missing link, however, the vehicles themselves are laughably terrible. They have so little HP that you can barely move 2 inches before the enemies destroy them. The helicopter is fun to use, especially during certain levels, but most often you'll be lucky to get off the ground. The mech isn't terrible when it comes to its offense, but the mobility is truly dogshit. I literally cannot believe the designers programmed it this way. The speeder bike is exactly like you'd expect, and the tank does have some decent firepower. If these could last longer in battle, maybe it wouldn't be so bad if you didn't equip a specific weapon to take down the dropships. It's definitely worth noting, however, that the weapon limit restriction isn't nearly as much of an issue when you're playing co-op, as you'll essentially have 4 different weapon slots, so as long as one of the 4 is a sniper rifle or a rocket launcher, you'll be golden. Perhaps this is more evidence that this game was built around its co-op functionality, but not granting a 3rd weapon slot as a utility last resort dropship killer is a shame on single player. At the very least, some text on the mission select screen outright saying if there will be dropships would be welcome. This isn't just a problem for first playthroughs either, by the way, as I've played the game a few times now and still can't tell you which missions contain them or not. Although it is very much possible to acquire all 171 weapons, it's my advice to never even give that a second thought. My buddy, who has spent much more time in the game than I have, did manage to get all of the weapons, but lost some of his sanity in the process. To put it in perspective, by playing through all of the levels on easy, normal, hard, hardest, and inferno once through, he had about 6,000 health in total. After finally acquiring that last elusive weapon, he had over 10,000. But hey, at least he finally got that last prominence though, right? Some of the more interesting weapons are given out when you finish all of the levels on a certain difficulty, most notably the genocide gun. It's one of the most dangerous in the game, for both you and the enemy. To fire it safely while standing on the ground, the precise angle takes some troubleshooting. Right here is perfectly safe, right here is instant death. To truly comprehend the devastation, here's what the starting rocket launcher looks like, and here's the genocide gun. Yeah. The many weapons you find are very fun to try out and experiment with in the field. However, there's no denying that the 171 number contains some fluff. Many assault rifles are simply worse versions of later ones, and the same goes for grenade launchers, homing weapons, rockets, and so on. Once you advance in difficulty, the majority of them become obsolete, so in a way, the best weapons available to the player at a given time could be viewed as the character's level. It's interesting how much EDF resembles an RPG in some ways. The player's offensive and defensive stats grow as they play the game, with the weapons and armor filling those roles respectively. Their capacity to deal damage and avoid death objectively increases irrespective of them improving their skills. If they come across a challenge too great for them at their current level, they can go back and grind for more health and potentially better weapons. Considering EDF is a Japanese game, those RPG tropes make a lot of sense. If this were a modern title created by a Western game studio, I'd imagine all of this would be replaced with skill trees. Fucking skill trees, man. A few of the weapons manage to stand out with a certain gimmick, such as an assault rifle that shoots in a V, a shotgun that fires in a vertical spread, and the bound gun, which can ricochet its bullets off walls. The entire special column has a bunch of absolutely bizarre arsenal choices that give reason for the category to exist in the first place. Beyond the gimmick edge cases, the weapon stats are what affects their effectiveness in battle, and it's a lot more than a simple raw damage number. Range, reload speed, clip capacity, rate of fire, accuracy, zoom level, homing strength, blast area, and fuse length. Certain attributes go with specific weapon types, so you're unlikely to see homing strength for a shotgun or fuse length for an assault rifle. Some grenades are hand-thrown, while others use a launcher. Some explode on contact, others explode after a given time, and a few require the player to detonate them manually. You can see how all of these variables play a role in which weapon to pick. On one end of the spectrum, you could have a high-capacity assault rifle with extremely fast rate of fire and quick reload speed, and on the other end is a rifle that only holds 8 shots with a slow rate of fire, but has much higher damage and more range. Then there's the Air Tortoise, which is the best weapon in the game, and you can't tell me otherwise. Just look at him go! The reloading speed and clip capacity are stats that might not seem noteworthy when you begin playing, as if you're used to other shooters, it's one of those things you just kinda deal with when you start using it. However, Earth Defense Force isn't like other games. For example, some guns can't be reloaded at all and are useless once they're empty. Not ideal for a long level by any means. Some weapons take 20 seconds to reload, a few of them even take 30 seconds! I want you to imagine the longest reloading animation you've ever seen in any other shooter, and compare it to this. Utterly insane. The physical act of reloading in many games can, at times, feel like a mini loading screen that you're forced to endure, but EDF doesn't even try to hide this fact, it leans into it. The weapons in 2017 won't reload unless you have it equipped, and if you get knocked down, it pauses until you get back up. Absolutely brutal. That being the case, the 30-second reloading time of the impulses make them a mostly useless option unless you're intentionally goofing off. The turret's 20 seconds are something you may have to endure on higher difficulties, especially playing solo, as Hardest and Inferno are ridiculously punishing with only one player, so this loading screen is something you may see quite often if you take the plunge. I will say that the reloading process potentially taking so long works better in EDF than it would in any other shooter, since a quarter of your time will be spent rolling around anyway, so may as well utilize that time for your benefit. The lengthy descriptions for every weapon are pretty interesting, especially considering the amount of detail that wasn't necessary at all. Some are nearly an essay, while some are... What? A gas burner for welding? Well, I guess Dead Space's main weapon is a supposedly ordinary tool, and that was awesome, so maybe this is similar. Oh, Jesus. Thankfully, the real flamethrowers are a huge improvement, as they deal a decent amount of damage, can penetrate to hit multiple enemies in a line, and it even stun locks them. With the stun lock in mind, they also create a nice 1-2 combo when paired with a deadly explosive, as you can tag an enemy with a sticky grenade that would normally kill you, and stun them long enough so you can get clear of the blast. In total, there are less than 10 or so enemy variants, and even that number is being generous. Black ants, red ants, giant ants with wings, spider, giant spider, gunship, red gunship, hectors with all sorts of different loadouts, and the kaiju monsters. It is a bit of a shame that there isn't more variety, but future games more than make up for it in my opinion with the addition of a very specific enemy type, so this for now is fine as a starting point. The black ants spray acid, which can slow both you and the game down considerably. The red ants are tougher but don't have any ranged attacks, but their melee strikes do a hefty amount of damage on higher difficulties. The queen ant sprays an absurd amount of acid your way, making it difficult to see and move. The spiders also make it difficult to move with their webbing, so it's best to take them down one by one ASAP so they don't overwhelm you. The king spider has the same gimmick as the queen ant. They keep the same attacks as their base variant, just much more. Something funny about the king spider is that it seems that they have their jump height maxed out to match the peak the regular spiders have. This can look pretty goofy since their leap looks adorably tiny compared to the regular spiders. The gunships fly around and shoot down at you, and the red variations are the same thing but have much more health. The hectors have some assortment of weapon arms they'll shoot you with, either from long range or, if you're nearby, directly towards your face. The hectors themselves are probably my favorite enemy in the game. While most enemies react a little bit as they get shocked, and a lot of it when they die, the hectors sway dramatically backwards and sideways as you fire at them. Their arms seem to lock onto your character no matter how fast you move, so shooting them out of position is vital to staying alive when in close range. When you finally take them down, the explosion is extremely satisfying as it lights up the entire screen with dramatic effect. The kaiju monsters are a mixed bag. It is kind of cool to see them roll around and fuck up the landscape, but the act of fighting them isn't as satisfying as the designers likely wanted it to be. They're also in missions all by their lonesome for some reason. No other enemies are present, which is kind of a shame. There technically are 2 other enemy types, but they're so large they more resemble a big structure that just so happens to have weak points. The big walking AT-AT wannabe and the mothership. The wannabe AT-AT is called the Quadruped Fortress and shows up in quite a few missions. The EDF team never manages to take it down until later in the game, so more often you'll see it meander off in the distance without a care in the world. The mothership shows up in the very first mission, where it's mostly for show, and during the very last, where you have your climactic final battle. It's pretty difficult if you don't know what to prioritize, as gunships keep coming out, and the mothership goes through a series of transformations, most of which have different attack patterns and weak points. The player is more important than usual in this mission, as the character they play as is the only EDF soldier left standing near the end. You can hear the commanders on the intercom talk about how there's still one brave soldier fighting, and you eventually take down the fucking thing all by yourself. Or with a friend in co-op, of course. However, if you hate your friend and never want to work with them, beyond purposely friendly firing them to death in the campaign, you can take them on 1v1 in battle mode. The vehicles are a great time here, and it makes me wonder how enjoyable they could have been in the real game if they had some more health. Now that you've seen almost everything there is to see in EDF 2017, I want to return to my claim from the beginning of the video. Earth Defense Force offers what many games don't even try to, and is one of the best console shooters to ever exist. The first claim is very easy to understand. There simply aren't that many games that provide a true co-op experience, split screen or otherwise. Of the ones that do, none of them are as over-the-top, wacky, or ridiculous as EDF is, while also managing to provide genuinely fun gameplay scenarios to take part in. Yeah, in Gears of War, you can kind of blast bugs with a friend, but fucking hell, nothing even comes close to being able to blow up a spawner of spiders and watch them fly through the stratosphere. The campy tone of the series works tremendously well when paired with a friend, as you can both laugh at the absurdity of it all. That alone would be great if that's all it had going for it, but there's something else that kind of makes this series remarkable in a way, something that you may not realize, even though it's so obvious in hindsight. Every enemy in this game is gigantic. Pause for dramatic effect. I realize I'm stating the obvious, but seriously, what's something that's always talked about when it comes to console shooter games? That aiming with the right analog stick can be tricky for newcomers, and it's much less precise than a mouse and keyboard. Well, it's a lot harder to miss when your opponent is the size of a building. As simple as it is, this alone makes EDF one of the best console shooters of all time in my eyes. Don't get me wrong, I can definitely appreciate games like Uncharted, Gears of War, Halo, and so on. I'm very familiar with aiming at tiny humanoid enemy heads with the right analog stick, and that can be enjoyable. But almost every game that exists has you firing at human-sized enemies, which can be awfully tiring. Blasting giant bugs and robots is pretty relaxing comparatively, even though the setting and background can be quite intense. The big, easy-to-hit enemies also gives purpose to many of the more ridiculous and outlandish weaponry at your disposal. The Hammer of Dawn and Torque Bow are great weapons in Gears of War, along with the Needler in Halo. However, most of your arsenal is normal shooty guns, especially when looking at the likes of Call of Duty and Battlefield. I highly doubt you'd see something as silly as the Air Tortoise, as laughably awful as the Burner, or as devastatingly destructive as the Genocide Gun in any other game, and for that, I think we have the gigantic bugs to thank. While Earth Defense Force 2017 definitely has its flaws, there's no denying that it's an extraordinarily unique experience. There are some quality of life problems, such as not knowing if a dropship spawner will be in a level, the pathetic durability of every vehicle, and many of the tedious nuances related to the item drops. However, the destructible environments and oversized bugs are fun to blow up, the sheer amount of weapons to play with is insane, the setting, story, and NPCs are adorably campy, and the entire thing can be played seamlessly with a friend in split screen. Even though it's not quite as strong as a few of the games later in the series, it certainly laid a solid foundation. It still holds up to this day as a cheesy good time with a friend. I would love to recommend it, but because 4.1 and 5 are so good, I'd say if you haven't played this series before and are interested, you should give one of those a shot first and see if you like it. You can always come back to 2017 later on if you want to see those 2D sprite pickups for yourself. Thanks for watching, everyone, and thanks as usual to my Patreon supporters, the true unsung heroes of the world. If you'd like to support the channel with money, you can head over and sign up to the Patreon. If you'd like to support the channel with not money, you can leave a comment, like the video, or share the video. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, by the way. I see you, you bunch of freeloaders. Michael, yeah, you. You think you can watch my videos for free without liking, commenting, or subscribing? Well, yeah, you can. You got me there. Alright, I'm off to work on another 2017 video. Be back in a few.